Well, it didn't take long after Kellen Moore got the Saints job before he started interviewing Eagles coaches. Except even though a lot of people are freaking out, I'll share why you shouldn't be really that concerned about Philly losing guys to New Orleans. Plus, Nolan Smith's had enough of the national critics and called him out. And also, despite some other changes coming for the Birds, let's talk about how this is really perfect timing for some of these things to happen and what's ahead for Howie Roseman. But first, let's run it. Alright, man, what a weekend. By the way, going to be giving away one of these t-shirts. All you got to do is hit a like on the video, make sure to subscribe to the channel, and tune in to one of the upcoming live streams. Not going to lie, I wasn't quite sure what to do with myself without football on for the first time in forever. Although it was probably for the best getting some R&R and trying to recover, which is just about everyone considering how the victory parade went on Valentine's Day. I mean, I don't know who's more worn out, the people involved in the parade or the news anchor who cut in to bleep out the speeches anytime a curse word was said.
Do you even know what you just said?
Like, come on, they would have honestly been better off if they just put a disclaimer at the bottom saying live television, excuse the language, just leave that up there nonstop. At least that way, we could have made out more of what the fellas were actually saying.
I didn't understand a one word you said.
Be that as it may, regardless, it was one of the best days ever. And it was awesome getting to hear from everyone at the event. Well, I guess just about everyone. However, I was actually hoping to hear from Nolan Smith and what he might say when he took the mic. Except bro was without a doubt and confirmed by multiple teammates the most plastered of the entire group. Which is maybe not surprising considering everything he does is full throttle. It just left for a more eventful next morning.
Is that a wastebasket?
Yeah, right there.
Thank you.
Holy hell!
Alright, for those wondering, Nolan is back to full strength and did survive the parade. And although he didn't get to speak last week, it was actually his public communication calling out Emmanuel Acho that might have made bigger noise, with the edge rusher calling the facility host a hater for his Cowboys take.
Okay. The Cowboys are one Eagles offseason away from a Super Bowl. They are one Eagles offseason away.
That sounds easy.
They're running. No, it's not easy.
Sounds simple.
It's not simple.
No, it sounds simple, dog.
It's not, because you know how
so let's take how he's done, it don't matter.
It's not easy at all.
Not.
But that is what they are. They're running back away. Eagles offseason, Saquon Barkley. They're linebacker away. Eagles offseason, Zack Baun. They're one offensive lineman away. Eagles offseason, Mekhi Becton. They're a number 2 wide receiver away. No Eagles offseason there. Obviously, they got Jahan Dotson, who contributed in the Super Bowl, but didn't do a ton during the course of the season. The Eagles are they're a defensive tackle away. Jordan Davis or Jalen Carter. The Eagles are one. The Cowboys are one Eagles offseason away from a Super Bowl. Like, that's it. Now, the difference is, like Shady said, Howie Roseman is a genius. He's a mastermind.
Keep going. I thought you were going to the cornerbacks next.
No, corners, I like Devon Bland. I like Deron Bland. I like Trayvon Diggs. I think the Cowboys, they have Super Bowl caliber cornerbacks. I think they have Super Bowl caliber pass rushers. I think they have a Super Bowl caliber offensive line plus an additional addition. I think they have a Super Bowl caliber number 1 wide receiver in CeeDee Lamb. I think they have a Super Bowl caliber tight end in Jake Ferguson. So I think they have Super Bowl caliber players, but they are a running back, a defensive tackle, healthy linebacker play, an additional offensive lineman, and a number 2 wide receiver, I think, away from the Super Bowl. But that's an Eagles offseason.
See, this is the part it's hard to tell. Does Acho actually legit believe that, or is it his producers just saying something? Because, again, it's going to get views, it's going to get people riled up and just, create chaos. Because going back to his take, even though it's difficult, people want to act like what Howie Roseman has done can be completed in one offseason. Except even in Acho's example, he listed things that took multiple years for Howie to piece together. But people got to have something to talk about, and we're reacting to Dak Prescott's delusional comments.
I feel like we compete with the Eagles and beat them for the most part when we played them. I don't want to say check the record when they're the guys holding the trophy right now. So credit to them. They've earned it and they deserved it by all means. But, yeah, very close, especially even watch the NFC game, the NFC Championship. And those two teams that we battle against each and every year, a couple of times. And as I said, feel confident about we've gotten the better part each and every time.
Look, personally, I'm just glad that Nolan called out Acho because, again, people are going to be haters nonetheless, but at least call him out there. And also, it's not like anybody could just go out and get the Philly Dogs. Because this group is just different. And speaking of, if you want to meet the Philly Dogs at the NovaCare Complex this offseason with me and Thomas, then just make sure to like and subscribe to the channel because we'll be drawing for winners to attend in an upcoming live stream. Also, this next part is 100% my favorite collab of the entire channel's existence, so listen up. Because you guys know I've been a Nolan Smith fan since day one. And I also enjoy hitting a golf ball every now and then. So when I was invited to play in Nolan Smith's charity golf tournament at Southbridge Golf Club in Savannah at the end of March, there wasn't even a hesitation. Like, come on, hanging out with the Philly Dogs, playing some golf, enjoying some good food, networking with other Eagles players, it doesn't get much better than that. And here's the best part. If you want to play in the tournament on March 31st, all you got to do is hit up my guy Darren for more information. FYI, I've got his contact info in the description and in the pinned comments. And there's all kinds of options to get involved, whether you're by yourself or bringing a foursome. Plus, even if you aren't a golfer, they have various sponsorship packages that will get you into the event with a buffet lunch, memorabilia auction, and a meet and greet. By the way, I should also mention that all the profits go to support families in need throughout the community. So again, this is a fantastic event, incredible collab, really just blessed to be a part of it. But get signed up, have a fantastic time, and make a positive impact on the community. Oh yeah, this probably goes without saying, but spots are filling up incredibly quickly, so reach out while you can to lock in your spot. More details in the description. Now, speaking of locking in your spot, Howie Roseman has been busy and already made 13 signings according to the NFL's official transaction wire. Granted, this isn't out of the norm, as this is when teams typically offer contracts to players who are on their practice squad as a way to keep them on the offseason roster. So yeah, not many of these guys are likely to make the 53-man roster, especially once we get all the way to August, but again, it's worth consideration, looking at this team, maybe guys to make some potential impacts and everything else, so let's get into it. First, there's cornerback Tariq Castro-Fields, who graduated from Penn State in 2021 and was drafted in the 6th round by the 49ers. And at 6'1", 197 with a 4.38 40, Tariq has the physical tools. It's just that his ability in man coverage has lacked quite a bit, and he hasn't necessarily had the best spatial awareness in zone according to multiple scouts. However, seeing as though Darius Slay could be on his way out, and it wouldn't surprise me to see a team offer a contract to Isaiah Rodgers, Castro-Fields may have a shot to earn a roster spot. The issue for him, though, is there's a ton of competition in the secondary, with Howie Roseman signing 3 other defensive backs in Perry Nickerson, Andre Sam, and A.J. Woods. Granted, Andre Sam is more of a safety, and I'll be curious to see if he can beat out Tristan McCollum for a spot next season. Yet when it comes to Nickerson and A.J. Woods, I'd be extremely surprised if they ended up making the final roster. The next player on the list is wide receiver Elijah Cooks, who does offer a bigger frame at 6'4", 215 pounds, yet the depth the Birds have already doesn't seem like a great chance to elevate into a bigger role. Plus, if anything, my money would be on Danny Gray as a pass catcher to elevate to the active roster. Although I still don't see him carving out a role ahead of the other guys, I'm just saying he has the best chance. Now, running back Tyrion Davis-Price could be a different story, because he actually showed a little bit in preseason action last year. And considering that Kenny Gainwell will very likely be on the move, TDP feels like a legit option for RB3 if Philly doesn't add one through the draft or free agency. Of course, you could say the same thing for defensive ends KJ Henry and O'Shawn Mathis, with both players being signed. Except where I'm unsure when or if the Eagles end up getting a backup running back, there is no doubt in my mind that Howie is going to be hunting edge players, but I'll get into that a little bit later here in this video. The guy on the D-line who I do think benefits from some of the potential moves, though, is Gabe Hall. Remember, he's the undrafted free agent from Baylor last year who has some tremendous upside with crazy athleticism. For example, the dude has a 34.5-inch arm length and ranks in the top tier of elite interior defensive linemen for athleticism. Oh yeah, let's also not forget that multiple outlets were calling him the next Reed Blankenship. And Ryan Fowler put Hall as the most likely to make the roster due to his tremendous alignment versatility while also being able to produce against both the run and the pass. Okay, so obviously that didn't happen last year, but still, the fact that he is being re-signed, he's one of the only UDFAs the Eagles kept around, plus he was one of the first moves that Fangio made after the draft last season. I think that tells you all you need to know. Because at 6'6", 290 pounds, it's easy to see on tape that the 24-year-old presents quite a few mismatches. To me, the potential is certainly there, and that's not even a question. It's just obviously when you have so many dominant interior guys, it makes it harder to get playing time. So I'll say it here, and I will double down again. Keep an eye out on Gabe Hall, because again, with Milton Williams going off to free agency, very unlikely that he returns to Philly. Gabe Hall is certainly one to keep your eye on to make the roster. Anyway, the other names to mention that Howie just signed are linebacker Dallas Gant, who may have an outsider's chance for a special teams role. After all, even if the likely signings of Zack Baun and Oren Burks happen, both Nakobe Dean and Ben Van Sumeren suffered season-ending injuries, so it's uncertain when they'll be ready and get back into the mix. And then there's Nick Muse, who Philly added to compete for a backup tight end role, as well as tackle Laken Vakalai, who, reminder, the Birds got via the international exemption despite never previously playing football. Look, I'm never going to say never with Jeff Stoutland and an Aussie who's not played football before, but it's not exactly the same comparison of a Jordan Mailata and Laken Vakalai. Again, never say never. Maybe something happens. He just barely got in any action last offseason or certainly in the preseason, so kind of uncertain there, but it's an exemption, doesn't really require a roster spot, so who knows. By the way, there were also 5 guys who finished the season on the Eagles practice squad but were not retained, with those being fullback Kari Blasingame, linebacker Nicholas Morrow, defensive end Charles Harris, quarterback Ian Book, and wide receiver Kyle Phillips. Granted, it's not like the Birds couldn't swoop back in and re-sign them at some point, but I think the writing's on the wall for their future in Philly.
I have no future here.
All right, we wish him well, best of luck in the future, but that's not exactly the same thing that we're saying towards the coaches interviewing right now. In case you don't get that reference, so ever since Kellen Moore took the head coach job in New Orleans, he's been interviewing several Eagles positional coaches, as he's now interviewed Doug Nussmeier and Jemal Singleton for his offensive coordinator position, and interviewed Christian Parker for his defensive coordinator role, naturally leaving a lot of people to be upset.
But don't ever take sides with anyone against the family again.
Look, I get the emotions, but my gosh, people are losing their minds over something that is really not that big of a deal. Hear me out. I know some people want to freak out and act like Kellen Moore's out to get Philly or just trying to poach as many guys as he can off of a Super Bowl winning staff. However, in reality, Kellen clearly has his favorite options for OC and Nussmeier and defensive coordinator in Brandon Staley. Again, I know there's been reports about Christian Parker as a rising name and could make things interesting in the hiring process. And sure, there's no question CP is eventually going to land a defensive coordinator role. Like, sorry, he's just too good, he's young, he's got crazy potential, and also had one of the best stretches for secondary players ever since he's been coaching in the league. Yet remember, just like every team has to deal with, the league requires teams to follow the Rooney Rule when it comes to interviewing. And I'm not saying Christian Parker doesn't deserve it, but it feels like a way to satisfy a requirement and then move on with your hiring.
Name: Dwight Schrute. Thank you, Mr. Schnute. We will let you know.
Who knows? Maybe I end up being wrong or I jinx the whole thing, but this really does feel like Nussmeier is going to end up getting the offensive coordinator role in New Orleans. His son is playing for LSU, not a surprise. And then the Eagles are going to have to focus on a quarterback coach and an offensive coordinator. Now, when it comes to the positive traits of what Philly needs in an offensive coordinator, Jordan Mailata said the main thing has been listening and being open to changes to problem solve and game plan. Along with Lane Johnson saying ultimately Moore still kept things simple for the offense to be on the same page, yet presented a complex look to the defense. And there's no question that really started to pay dividends as QB1 took control.
For us as an offense, I think the more assertive I became throughout the year, the more in sync, the more complementary, the more rhythm we had. And so there's been a lot of changes, a lot of different things, and I know every coordinator has their own approach and their own way of seeing it, but it's just about meshing that.
By the way, this is not an official report, but I have started to hear from very reputable sources that Kevin Patullo is a clear-cut favorite for the OC job. Obviously, I'll keep everyone posted as soon as we get the official word, but the other signing that continues to circulate is Philly bringing back Zack Baun, as that is clearly at the top of everyone's list for Howie Roseman to execute. Again, I have all the confidence in the world that that deal gets done. Unfortunately, that means you're looking at Milton Williams and Josh Sweat headed on their way out because you can only pay so many guys. However, when you consider where the Eagles are at and the needs they have, the timing couldn't be more perfect for Howie to replace those holes. Because if I were to list out the biggest needs for Philly, I would say defensive end, defensive tackle, tight end, and maybe offensive tackle depending on what they do with Mekhi Becton. But here's the good news. This draft class is one of the best classes for those first three positions. Like, take a look at draft analyst Daniel Jeremiah, who said last year at this time he had 12 potential starter grades at defensive tackle, but now this year he has 24 of them. So yeah, that's a ridiculous amount of depth for a position of need for the Eagles. And when it comes to a player most seem to be initially linking to Philly, that would be defensive tackle Walter Nolan. As the Enquirer's Devin Jackson suggested the Ole Miss product is the most realistic in current mock drafts and noted that at 6'3", 305 pounds, the 21-year-old is incredibly elusive and explosive for his size, with Nolan primarily lining up as a 3 technique. However, even with his size, he clearly has the versatility to stop the run and the pass, featuring quick hands to blow up running plays and aggressiveness to pressure the passer. Heck, the dude finished with career highs this past season with 14 tackles for loss and 6.5 sacks. Honestly, for me, if Nolan's available at pick 32, that is an absolute no-brainer. Again, the upside with him to pair with Jalen Carter and the rest of the defensive line is just ridiculous. But, you may be more of a fan to go the defensive end route, and if that's the case, a guy like Texas A&M's Nick Scorton isn't a bad option. Because at 6'4", 285 pounds, Scorton would offer more of that power and bull rush the Eagles could be losing in Brandon Graham. Now, the potential drawback is that the 20-year-old had a bit of a down year in terms of production and struggled with consistency. Although at just 20 years old, he's got still a ton of potential left, and also at the beginning of the season, this guy was near the very top in terms of who is the top edge rusher or pass rusher in college football. So I'll just say, taking a chance on him would definitely be worthwhile to me. Okay, so I got into a couple D-line considerations, but how about tight end? I won't lie, I'd love the route of Tyler Warren from Penn State, but I just can't see Howie Roseman trading up to go get a tight end. However, there's a ton of depth just like the D-line, and someone who could be available in that late third-round range is Harold Fannin Jr., which, in case you aren't familiar with Fannin's game, he had 117 catches, over 1,500 yards, and 10 touchdowns with Bowling Green last season. Like, I know we don't need another dominant pass catcher in this offense, but still, you pair his potential with the offensive weapons you already have, and come on, I mean, it's at least a little bit scary. Also, just another little nugget I found, but Devin Jackson reported that the Eagles met with LSU guard/tackle Miles Frazier multiple times at the Senior Bowl a few weeks ago. So something to keep an eye on for, since the Camden native played 4 of the 5 spots on the O-line, and we know Jeff Stoutland loves his versatility. Also, Frazier was named the top O-lineman on the American squad based on votes from defensive players on the opposing team, so he certainly turned some heads. Still though, right now he's projected somewhere around that 6th round range, so not really projected to go super early. But like I said, the fact that the Eagles are going to have holes, yet this draft class sets up perfectly for them, is pretty fortunate. Plus, one more thing there, Lane Johnson confirmed that he will play for at least a couple more years. Since, nothing rejuvenates you to keep on going more than winning and having a healthy season. Granted, at some point, the Birds are going to have to draft Lane's replacement. Yet to not have to force anything, going after a replacement in this year's draft is definitely a luxury. Although, shout out to D'Anthony DeBona, but when you look at the 30 meetings the Eagles have had so far with prospects this year, 8 of them are offensive linemen. So, certainly worth keeping an eye on as they begin to schedule visits in Philly for their top 30 visits. And reminder, the NFL Combine is less than 10 days away, so I'll have more videos to recap which players the Birds have met with and who to keep your eye on and everything else next week. For now, do me a favor, drop a like on this video if you haven't yet, make sure you're subscribed, turn the notifications on, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. This has been the Philly Special.